Hey guys, how you doing? It's Captain Fred with Fishing Florida Flats. On today's episode of Tips and Tricks, we're going to be discussing trout fishing, a little bit of how-tos, what to look for, and the types of baits we use when it comes to targeting trout. We're transitioning to that time of the year. The water temps are cooling down. A lot of our trout are marching back into the inshore waters. We're finding them out on the points. We're finding them in the flats, out in front of everything from Philmans down to Port Richey, Gulf Harbors, all that area. We're getting a good influx of trout. We've been catching a lot of trout on charters. So the trout fishing is starting to get really good, and it's just going to get better from here as we transition into the winter. If we're going to be targeting trout with artificial baits, I have a few baits that I personally like to use. One of my favorites this time of the year, when we still have lots of bait on the flats, it's going to be a paddle tail made by Down South Lures. There's multiple colors. This green color with a chartreuse tail is one of my favorites, and also in a, they call it ice white. It's a great color, works wonders. The trout love it. It's got a great fall to it. It's got a really thin paddle tail. It works great. As we get a little bit colder months, I'll switch to more of a artificial shrimp. This is made by Monster 3X. It's a slow working bait. It has a great action, and when it falls, it has a great slope to it. And it's another one of my key baits. Either one of those two baits you can match up with a nice long shank, 1/4 ounce, or 1/8 ounce jig head, depending on the water depth you're fishing. If you want to throw a hard bait at these, the Rapala Shallow Wrap is a great bait of choice. I love using these. They get a great response out of the trout when you're fishing over flats and that. Also mirror lure, any of those twitch baits are going to work really good. If you're throwing live bait at these trout, nothing more than a 2-0 circle hook. I love a VMC. It's a great hook, strong hook. I'll tie this up with 20-pound leader, nothing more than 20-pound. If you're just trout fishing, 20-pound is more than sufficient. And then 10-pound main line. And I use pretty light setups when it comes to trout fishing. Bait of choice is obviously always going to be greenbacks. I throw a lot of greenbacks as being a captain. But another bait of choice as we start to get colder is going to be small pinfish. You can always put small pinfish on and get a good reaction out of these trout. When it comes to trout fishing in and of itself, when you start catching a lot of the same size trout on a flat, if you're fishing a flat and you come across a lot of 14s, 15s, 16s, the odds are the majority of fish you catch on that flat are going to be 14s, 15s, and 16s. Trout pretty much school up in the same numbers of size. So if you get to another flat and you're catching 18s and 19s, you're going to catch majority fish that size. What I look for when I go to target very large trout, and it's not always the case, but a lot of times what I'll find in this time of the year is when our snook push back in, we're going to find large trout schooled up with big snook. A lot of times when people go fishing, we'll see a big pot of snook working a bank, or they're up in our jetty or at the mouth of a channel, and we'll see big snook, anything in the 35-inch range, and we'll see a couple other smaller fish with them, but we're not looking at them because we might just think those are smaller snook with them, when in reality those are very large trout that are with that pot of snook. So a lot of times when I'm snook fishing, I'll catch some very big trout, anything from 24, 25, 26-inch trout that are going to be pushed up with those snooks. So that's always something to keep an eye out. That's a trick I've learned over years of fishing. A lot of times also you'll find big trout pushing with schools of mullet up on the oyster bars or up on the flats. Another thing I'd like to talk about when it comes to trout fishing is handling trout. If we're catching a lot of these smaller trout and we're not putting them in the ice box, release them with care. A lot of times I'll leave these trout in the water. I'll try to take the hook out of their mouth in the water just to get them back swimming, keep them healthy. I don't like handling them too much, too roughly, letting them fall on the deck of the boat. They're not really a resilient species, so the less you can handle them and the less you can damage them, we'll get them back in the water and keep them healthy. If you guys like this video today, just do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, give me a like, give me a subscribe, do all that. And I appreciate you guys' time, and you have a good day.